Welcome to the Catholic Table Talk podcast. This is where everything Catholic is on the table. New episodes Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on most podcast platforms. Here's your host, William Sauber.
You see it everywhere in society. You see it in your neighborhoods. You see it in your regional. You see it state. You see it national. You see it throughout the world. It's addiction. And pretty much if you get a hold of it, it's hard to let go and it gets a hold on you. You see it again with people on the streets with drug addiction. You see it maybe your family has very bad alcoholic addiction. Maybe you have sexual addiction, sexual problems with that. And actually, in the Catholic Church, addiction usually is like a mortal sin, right? Because it's something that's not good for you. And so you gotta confess it. But if addiction is so bad, it becomes more habitual or habit. So it doesn't really become a moral sin anymore because it's like brushing your teeth in the morning or at night. You just do it. And it's really affects on your life, but also the lives of others around you that most people forget that they're hurting. So today we have an author of a book about kind of battling addiction, excuse me. It's titled Winning the Battle with Sexual Purity, more towards the sexual side of things. His name is Dan Aungst. A little bit about Dan is a certified addiction counselor, speaker, author, recovering addict, and founder of worldtopurity.com. Dan has authored several books, including one from one addict to another, 40 Days to Freedom, and Winning the Battle for Sexual Purity, which is the book we're talking about today. He also created the God's Plan for Healthy Sexual Workshop and the international distribution pamphlet, Five Keys from Sexual Sin, which I feel like a lot of people in today's society could use that book or could use that pamphlet, which received an imprimatur from Archbishop Samuel J. Aquino. So again, of course, we always love to have authors on. We have had a lot of authors on, and a lot of great feedback on a lot of the books that we've had on the show. So I think this one, again, if you know someone, if you're battling with an addiction, especially on the sexual side of things, um, Danny's here to help you out, and check out his website in the show notes after the show. We'll have him down there. So let's welcome on to Dan Ust. So Dan, thank you for what you do in your ministry at World to Purity, and thanks for hopping on with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Amen. Thank you. So, in your own journey, Dan, from addiction recovery, explain how, your new relationship with Jesus helps addicts really to, counsel them today and understand that their feelings kind of emphasize and rejection are not the true identity in Christ, which again, we tend to forget that.
Sure. Um, a lot of times with addictions in general, people believe it relates to who they think that they are. It's what I call a false identity. So, um, pretty much everyone has different shame issues that they carry, usually stemming from childhood, things that make them. They would say that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not known. There's so many things that have that we talk about in our programs and books, and I'm no different than that. In my journey, I say that I was addicted for over 30 years, and I've been in recovery for a little over 15 now. And I usually, a lot of people will say, they're addicted to porn or whatever, and I will say I'm a recovering sex addict. And I say that because it goes way beyond porn for me. I was involved in prostitution, massage parlors, affairs, the whole gamut in my time. And early on, I grew up Methodist and was baptized Methodist, but really wasn't practicing or anything. Um, After I got married in my mid-20s, my wife was Catholic and I became Catholic, converted, kind of her prodding a bit.
Sure.
And in that process, I noticed that there was a lot of things that came out, an awareness that I didn't know about, in the addiction and in the behavior and so forth, especially in the Catholic Church, but really in any church that the behavior is a serious sin. But in my recovery, there's there's literally dozens of miracles in my story that's on our own podcast and our own websites, but um, they take a lot of time to kind of get into. But for the most part, when it all came out for me and realized that this is a problem, I've got a problem, and it was impacting my marriage in a big way, and it was something that I couldn't control. I couldn't get a hold of myself. And we I and my wife were on the kind of the brink of divorce at one point, and we went and visited a priest that we had met through another encounter at a retreat, and he talked to her and he said, "Will you give me 2 months with him?" And she said, "Okay, I'll do that." Well, he got me started in a program, kind of a men's group thing that he and another guy started at that church there. And it was something that was very, um, I mean, there was a lot of religious tones and spiritual things with it, and some Catholic things to it. But it was what I began to learn, that I began to see about myself, and where my issues were. And I remember, in the addiction being that, you think that you're the only one like this. Everybody who's addicted to porn thinks I'm the only one. Nobody understands me. Yeah, I'm single-handedly responsible for a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Sure.
Right.
Um, but so I remember this first meeting that I went to with this small group of guys. Their protocol was to go around the group and everybody share like a 5 minute or 3 minute snippet of their story. And I'm sitting there listening to these guys. I'm thinking, uh, these guys get me. They understand me. I mean, there's 8, 9 guys or something in this group, and I say every one of them know what I'm going through because they're all the same thing, and it really impacted me. And one of the things that the first thing they were doing is they were listening to this Christopher West audio on sexual purity, and they were mostly done with it because they had done it over several meetings. And I thought, I want to hear the rest of this. So I ordered the audio, the CD, I think it was, off of Amazon or whatever, and I got it a couple days later, and I started listening to it myself. And this whole time, for years, decades, literally, I really didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what's wrong with me. Why can't I do this? What's happening here? Um, what's wrong with me? Why, I should be able to manage this and whatever. Well, Christopher West made a statement from G.K. Chesterton, like in the first few minutes of the video, or the audio at the time. And he said, "Every man who stands at the doorstep of a brothel is looking for God." I had to pause the audio. I was crying so hard. It was the first time in my life I'd ever understood what was going on. It hit me like a ton of bricks. That's really what it's all about. That's what I was looking for. It's what was happening. Um, and it's ultimately through the course of, learning and recovery, it's discovering that, not feeling loved like we should, as God designed. God created us to love and be loved, period. That's it. That's all there is. And everything in our life, it stems from that. And through our childhood and our younger lives, mostly, we are not perfectly loved. And if we're not perfectly loved, we have pain. And if we don't transform that pain, we're going to transmit it. And that's one of the basis of our programs, and what I teach and talk about is trying to find this pain and heal it, because it's what's driving us to seek these other methods of uh, coping or medication, as I call it sometimes, just a way to escape the unpleasantness of ourselves, So, and that was with that was, every man's doorstep of a brothel. We're at the doorstep of a brothel, thinking we're going there for entertainment, but we're actually looking for God. And the truth of that just floored me.
Oh, that's a great testimony. That's a great, great recovery story. I was just trying to get that out, wrapped around my head for a moment. I will throw this question at you, Dan. Just from, I struggle with some things like what you're going through, and I struggle in other things too. But like, for example, like, um, kind of when you're when you have a dark moment, and again, you're not gonna share too much, with you and your wife, but like, like, were you? You're open to making a change.
Mhm.
What do people ask you, like, my husband or my wife is not open to a change, and what would you say to that person if not open to change about turning their life around? For example, if I crack open a beer and my mom's like, just make sure you have one tonight before don't drive. I'm like, yeah, mom, whatever. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't fully sink into them. So what would you say to them if it's not really fully sinking into them of what's happening, and yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do. I talk to a lot of guys who will actually more accurate. I talk to a lot of, women or spouses or girlfriends or whatever who just say their boyfriend, husband, fiance, whatever is involved in doing this and looking at porn, and they're saying, "Well, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it." They don't get the damage that they're causing.
Right,
One of the largest misconceptions are that, well, it's just about me. It's between me and God. That's it. I'm not hurting anybody. And that is one of the biggest fallacies that are out there. Ask any woman, does your significant other looking at porn hurt you? Every one of them is going to say yes. So there you go, right there. That's one thing. Um, Porn is one of the, if not the number one fuel to human sex trafficking. It's created such a huge demand on pornography that there aren't enough willing, even though that's still a severely disordered or disturbed person to willing to do it. There's not enough willing to do it, that they're seeking. They have to go and coerce people, kidnap, in some cases, people, but or drug them to trick them to get them into doing. Scenes or whatever, or secretly filming things and stuff like that. It just, there's so much that is wrong with it. And then you pile on all the things that happen to an individual, um, psychologically, physically, whatever. There's damaging to the brain, the frontal lobes, um, the side effects of depression, anxiety, different things like that can happens to a person. Um, Also, activity in porn will, since you're objectifying another person, whether it's literally to them or on the screen, your brain is being reprogrammed to see people as objects.
right,
So you begin to objectify anybody, not just in sex, but in anything, even whether it's job or school or friends, they become things, and the idea of relating in a relationship um, begins to kind of take a back seat. So it really hurts relationships in general also. Besides the physical, damaging effects, the psychological problems, and the damage to the other people that it happens. So it's in those situations, it's trying to educate them to do that, to know, to understand that. What you mentioned earlier, one of the things we do is we have several pamphlets. One of the ones we have that priests give out in the confession all the time is called "So What's Wrong with Porn Anyway?" That's
right,
the question we hear. What's wrong with porn? Well, it's a little 8-page mini pamphlet that actually gets into every one of these little things. with a short paragraph of what they're about. So it kind of tells you what's wrong with it. It's way more than just you and the screen. So it starts with getting somebody to understand what's really happening. And if they are, and they're at the point to where, I've got a problem, but I can't stop I need help, then that's where we kind of specialize in with our materials is, what to do
Gotcha.
about it from there upon.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I know I've kind of threw a crowbar at you there, but that
No,
sounds
it's
really
fine.
good. All right. So, awesome. How does your book, Winning the Battle, address kind of the false belief that we talked about, receiving the full love of Christ?
The program number one, I call it a program, but the book number one is Catholic in theory, in the way that it discusses things. It talks about the sacraments as part of healing. Um, it talks about, the sin, forgiveness, all those kinds of things, and where, unforgiveness is a mortal sin. And so often the roots of our issues are deal in forgiveness and or the lack of forgiveness with someone at some point. Um, the part of the program or book is weaves itself into a daily action planner, which we do every single day, and it involves things like prayer. There's certain prayers to say. It asks for to read scripture. It has certain deliverance prayers that it's offered to do. You talk about boundaries and gifts of self and those kinds of things. It has confession, every so often to do. Um, we have seven cornerstones of commitment that we ask everybody to kind of to go through, which kind of surrounds, everything. Um, but even the boundaries that we have is discussing what what to do to keep yourself away from, to keep yourself from being tempted and so forth. Um, Even one of the small things that people I think tend to dismiss is we have something we ask a person to be a gift of self every day. And that in and of itself is rooted in scripture to where um, a kingdom it says the kingdom divided cannot stand. So you cannot give and take at the same time. God asked us to be a gift of selves, to give of ourselves to others selflessly, sacrificially, and so forth, as his son did in the ultimate way. Pornography is a gift to self. It's towards ourself. It's a selfish, prideful, self-centered behavior. You can't give and take simultaneously. So if you're giving of self, in your mindset, I'm giving to somebody something, whether it's helping, my wife do the dishes, or it's I'm opening the door for a stranger, or I'm at Starbucks and I'm paying for the person behind me, just not telling them, just say, hey, pay for this person behind me, whatever, and then it's a surprise, whatever. Small things like that. We're thinking of other people. We're getting outside of ourselves, and that's all as God asked us to be. So that's all, scriptural, spiritual, in nature. So
Right.
changing our behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all need to do that. Kind of talked a little bit about that in the last episode. And yeah, it's kind of trusting God, and it's changing our behavior because it's not about us, it's about a bigger picture. Which I mean, some days, like for
Yeah.
example, like opening the door for strangers, it can be very easy. Other days, it's like, nope, I'm walking in force, I'm getting that donut before they do. So,
Yeah.
but
Right, right. It's consciously trying to not be selfish,
you know,
being more selfless. It's a frame
so
of mind, it's
it
yeah,
is.
so
Yeah, it sure is. So what? I mean, I know this is for the book's for everyone out there, but the thing that keeps popping in my head, Dan, as you were talking about, my question that I asked was like, this sounds like a good book for that boyfriend out there, or that maybe that husband. Maybe again, I'm not saying that a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old doesn't battle porn as well, but just like in the early stages of married life and the early stages of for sure teenhood too, because I mean a lot of teens suffer and they battle through this as well. it's kind of
Yep.
more the target market. Is that a good point, or is it am I kind of going off on a tangent?
It's good. I mean, the book really is good for anybody. It's something that anybody that's struggling with sexual behavior,
Gotcha.
inappropriate sexual behavior of any type, whether it's, anything from lust, all the way to, full blown porn addiction or sex addiction. Because it all addresses the same root. They're all the same thing, whether lusting uncontrollably, or um, you're visiting prostitutes or massage parlors every week, whatever. Um, you're looking for the same thing. You're looking for God, really. You're looking for love. You're looking to be accepted and wanted and known. Um, and it's helping to recognize that and helping to find the roots of why aren't you? Why do you feel that you're not for whatever reason? And that's the point of what we try to do. And as I said earlier, when you have certain things that you're doing or learning, as you grow up and you don't have perfect love, you have pain. Well, I do a lot of free consultation calls with guys, which you can make an appointment on our website, by the way, to anybody that's listening. Um, Whenever I talk to a guy, the first thing I'm doing is I'm thinking, where is his pain? Okay. What is the thing that's making him want to do this? What is he trying to mask? What is he trying to cope with? What is it that he's trying to hide, from himself, practically? And it's just digging into that. So it's really and everybody, from childhood, on. I mean, right now the average age of first exposure statistically is 9 years old.
Right.
So,
Crazy.
I mean, I see 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds that can't stop. I get priests contacting me, say, I'm getting younger and younger kids in the confessional, and I don't know what to tell them. To a certain extent, with the age group, sometimes you got to be a little careful because they are minors, and the conversation has to be couched in a certain way. But you got these 12-year-olds that say, I'm addicted to porn and I don't want to tell my parents.
Crazy.
Something's got to happen somewhere.
Right. Absolutely. That's why God is appointing you to help with that ministry. I mean, help them out. So that's for sure. Um.
Yeah.
So how does your book help with like any addiction habit, whether it's alcohol, drug? We talked about lots about sexuality, but with really any addiction. I mean, I guess my point is, or my
Yeah.
thought is like addiction is just like again, it's like a habit. Like you can't get rid of it. So are they all the
Right.
same?
It's worse than a habit
Yeah.
is hence, the meaning of addiction in a way. But it's, we used to have a saying in some of the education I've done, addiction is addiction is addiction. It's
True.
all the same. It's just a different choice of mediums or different choice of what you consume, whether it's visually, physically, whatever. Um, but it's all the same root. The um, Quite often, people will think that, oh, well, alcohol addiction or something. You're addicted to the alcohol. Um, well, and while that's true, the source of it began with seeking something to, mask unpleasantness or bad day at work or school or whatever. You're going to go get a drink or two or three or five or whatever, um, to try to hide the way you actually feel. Well, with pornography, it's the same thing. And in reality, because of the chemicals involved, the natural chemicals involved in our brain, things like the dopamine, uh, oxytocin, vasopressin, testosterone, the whole thing. Um, Dopamine is the biggest part of it, but it all serves as a chemical cocktail that brings pleasure. And in reality, porn addicts are drug addicts. They're addicted to the naturally occurring chemicals that we can create on demand by thought, which makes them very dangerous. Um, and that's another part of the recovery that we have to deal with that we also address. Um, with that, it's the chemical part of the addiction or the behavior. So really any part of it is structured. Now, the recovery from a chemical portion of the addiction is different depending on the nature of the substance that you're consuming, but the
Okay.
roots are the same. You know, um, you talk to any alcoholic, and they're going to tell they're going to if they get to them to be honest, they're going to tell you how horrible they feel, or how horrible they look upon themselves. I just drink to forget. I drink because I don't like who I am. Very rarely is it, oh yeah, I go home and get smashed because I love it so much. It's usually not what you find. It's
Yeah.
like I just don't want to be me. It's the same thing. It's all rooted in the same stuff. And whether it's also things like shopping are also addictions. They're trying to fulfill an emptiness,
Sure.
when you're addicted to it. Video games. The dopamine in the brain it gets a pleasure. It spikes that with the types of video games that you're watching. A lot of the video games out there have sexual content in them, so they doubly pile on both aspects of it, making it very, very difficult to get beyond those sometimes. Um, and I run into a lot of guys who are addicted to video games and they don't understand. So how come I play for hours and hours, and then when I finish my game or I stop for the night or whatever, I have this just uncontrollable urge to go look at porn and act out, and I can't understand why. Um, and we discussed that. There's a reason for that. That's a real thing, and there's a reason for it. So we get into all that.
Sounds like a pretty much got the basic covered. It sounds like so awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, that's how I feel. I mean, it's like if I look like today was a great day at work, and I mean, if I was drinking out of my mind, but again, it was a great day at work. A cold one sounds good, but again, I'm only going to have one. I'm not going to add on. And
Yeah.
I don't look. I mean, yeah, I still look in the mirror, and sometimes I don't like the portion looking back. But again, I don't. I'm not to that point, and hopefully I never will. But yeah, it's more of, it's kind of like when we did, I was in Exodus 90 this past year. I'm trying to say, and so you give up alcohol, you give up all these things, and I guess I'm addicted to like buying stuff at the convenience store, right? So I'm addicted to the Coke. Addicted to eating a snack. It's sugar. I like it. It's
Uh-huh.
pleasure, but it's still, yeah, it doesn't really fulfill what you're searching for. And yeah, it's
Right. Right.
so I
Yeah.
like
You
that.
you like the way
Yeah,
it makes you feel,
exactly.
for the
Yep.
for the sugar things. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of terms people throw around. You
Sure.
mentioned habits once, and then there's also, there's habits, there's compulsions, and there's addictions, and so forth. And um, they're all a problem.
Right.
Addiction is something that kind of is more separated into a serious issue, that usually needs outside help, more often than not. But habits and compulsions will still bring you into mortal sin behavior, kinds of things, and are often uncontrollable, as well, you know, by a lot of people. So,
Yeah, that's true. Definitely. So we're talking with Dan Ust again from War to Purity. Dan, we have a couple of questions, and then we'll get you out of here. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show today
sure.
with us. So so I want to take a back step real quick. You said you give free kind of counselor talks with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have on our website, and it is limited availability, of course, but on our website, there's the things you can click on, check the calendar that I do. Um, it's listed as a free 15-minute consultation,
Okay.
just to kind of get a person started. Quite often, it ends up being more than 15 minutes,
Sure.
but that's fine. It's um, what I believe in, and unless I'm backed up to another call or something like that. If I'm talking to somebody and we're getting into something and it's like we're digging into some personal issues that we need to kind of get to, and 15 minutes comes up and it's like, Oh yeah, your mom hates you. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, our time is up.
Yeah,
No, I won't leave a guy like that. That's not why I do this.
right,
Um, but we just put 15 minutes for the sake of scheduling. But it's kind of interesting. Almost always the Holy Spirit always leaves the space. Somebody that really needs the time and a little more effort and a little more digging. Somehow the Holy Spirit did not get another person backed up at 15 minutes. They're at a 30-minute or an hour later. So I have time to spend with the guy usually. Um, but a lot of times we get started into our materials and our programs, and we have an online community called the Simon Community, where they can get on. They have there's live meetings by Zoom, on there as well, and other materials and stuff available to them. So usually I kind of point them in that direction, get them the right direction. But some instances too, I do offer direct counseling or coaching or however you want to call it. To individuals who want to go a little further, a little more time. And I don't even really call it counseling because it's a mix of counseling, deliverance, coaching, spiritual direction, because it's
sure,
all mixed in. It's
right.
all of it's involved, in getting a person, free. So just for the lack of a better term, I call it counseling, but I do that. I have a few clients that I do that with. But that's not the first goal I try to seek. So
Sure, absolutely. So you talked about earlier too, Dan, about the project or daily planning in the book. Um, what
yeah,
does that look like? And could you give us maybe a couple of examples for people listening to just maybe start breaking that habit, and then if
yeah,
they want to be deeper, they can visit you online.
yeah. The planner is to start with is 42 days,
Okay,
and there is each. So it's basically six weeks, and each 7-day segment builds upon itself. So we add a little more to it.
okay,
Like the first week, start with things like a unity prayer. It's a specific prayer that we give. We pray the seven cornerstones of commitment. Do a surrender prayer. Scripture reading that you can choose, upon your own. We give suggestions of a couple of hundred scriptures that deal with sexuality in the Bible. Um, some deliverance prayers, renunciation of spirits, kinds of things. We learn about boundaries and boundary violations, primary, secondary boundaries. Um, it's that is core is based around the fact that in my own recovery, many of the groups that I went to, they talked about boundaries or something similar, and they do check-in rounds with guys, and the guys would say, "Oh, I violated my boundary twice this week." Okay, now it's a little late when you violate your boundary. What leads up to it? So, what is a secondary boundary is what I call it. So, what do I need to do to keep myself kind of at arm's length from that? So, if you find that, oh, I go to bed at night, and I start checking my email, and then pretty soon I start looking at old Facebook pictures or stuff of an old girlfriend, and then I start looking at, you know, um, this kind of image or this actress that I like and seeing movie she's in. Just, you spend an hour online and then pretty soon you get a little bit by a little bit by a little bit and you find yourself looking at porn. Well, 3 out of 4 times it began with sitting down to look at email after everybody's gone to bed. Well, one of your boundaries needs to be you don't look at email alone or when everybody's gone to bed. Maybe you need to move your computer out of the bedroom into the public area of the household somewhere. Um, or you set something up, have a block on your computer to where after 7 p.m. it won't get on the internet.
sure,
Um, you do these things to have boundaries so you don't do this. You don't watch, sexual content movies because they can trigger you. They can begin that dopamine flowing. Just as, oh, I can handle this, no big deal. Well, sometimes it's not the question is can you handle it? It's should you handle it? Do you need to be watching this kind of thing? But that's some of the boundaries. And then we also talk about the gift of self, which I mentioned. And then confession. We recommend highly that you go to confession once every 2 weeks at a minimum. Um, and we have a whole section on that about quite often guys will go to confession after they've acted out, only when they're in mortal sin, rather than uh, regular, intervals because there's always something. Well, yeah,
Right.
I yelled at somebody, I profanity about somebody on the road that cut me off. I criticized this person. I whatever. There's always something that you could be confessing, even though it may be venial. It's still healthy to confess that and refresh and get that sanctifying grace to keep you strong. I use the example a lot of times. It's like you looked. Oh, I looked at porn 3 times this week. You go to the confessional. When you walk out of the confessional, do you tell yourself, "Oh wow, I feel good. I could go look at the porn right now"? No. You walk out and say, "I feel good. I'm never going to do this again."
Right.
It goes downhill after that for most people, but you get out, you feel strong, that is the grace in the confessional. You want to receive that. You want to stay in that position as much as possible. So, um, I would tell guys if that's something that you find yourself only going to confession after having acted out, find times you can go to confession and when you haven't acted out, when you just have some venial sins or something small, and you confess those. Get the grace for that. Leave the confessional feeling strong with that grace and that help, of Christ to keep you going. Maybe you've got to go to confession twice in a week because, after 4 days, I'm downhill and I'm gonna act out. Third day, go to confession. 3 more days, go to confession. I have a number of guys that I've done that with, and they say, I can't go more than 3 or 4 days, without looking at pornography. Well, go to confession first, and then do it again quickly after. Maybe 2 or 3 days after. There's always something that comes up, and then I'll talk to the guy sometime later. Says, I started doing that, and I've had 3 months of sobriety because they're kept on the grace from the confession of doing that. Now, the other thing with the book that I will tell you that we have somebody because it addresses the roots of who we are and what we're doing, rather than just some behaviors to change. I have numerous guys will contact me partway through this book or other programs we have, whatever. They're all the same philosophies. They say, I started this to get control of my porn habit. I've been doing it for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it is. It has changed who I am, and the porn's gone away on its own. That's the goal. That's what we want to do. We want to change who you are so you don't look for it. You don't need it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
So
it's
that's where we start, and then it just builds from there for the rest of the 6 weeks.
okay. Sounds good. No, that seems like a action plan. And like I said, 42 days long, so it's basically like let, right? Let's 40 days. It's about 2 days more than let. So
Yeah, and
I
what
mean,
we say too, to be clear on this too, this is not 42 days and you're done. You're good forever.
right, absolutely.
You're still a man. You still have temptations. You still have visual cues of things that are going to trigger you and so forth. Once you reach the 42 days, depending on where you're at, sometimes depending on where you're at, you may be encouraged to go back and do some over or restart some. But at least at we're doing at the 42-day mark, you're invited to continue ongoing because it's something that will always be a battle for life. I run into a lot of guys that, I did this and I feel great and I'm good to go. 3 months, 6 months later, crash and burn. They didn't have the proper stop gaps in. They didn't have the proper behaviors in. They began to start going down the wrong road. The enemy starts tricking them into little bit by little bit, little bit, thinking the wrong things, temptations, believing that, oh, it's no big deal. Oh, I can watch this movie. I can handle this. I can, gets them a little bit by little bit down to where they fall again instead of staying strong and being on top of it. So,
Like, yeah, just like a lot of people, like you said, with like confession. Most people, they come out feeling. I mean, everyone comes out feeling good, and then most of them, it's the same, but or usually, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's you gotta keep trying. You gotta keep plunging forward because it's a journey. It's a process. So
I use the example a lot of times. People will, you're always hearing, even in movies and whatnot, people are alcoholics. They'll go and they'll say, I'm still going to AA. I've been sober 27 years and I still go to my AA meeting, even on vacation. It's the same thing. You get your fix of sobriety and being real with other people, and that keeps you strong. And that's all we're doing.
yeah, thank you for doing that because that's really is a great ministry to be a part of. That's for sure. So, where can people go to purchase Winning the
Yep.
Battle, as well as other Road to Purity material?
You go to roadtopurity.com, and that's our website, roadtopurity.com. And in the menu, there is shop. You go to our online store, and there's numerous materials. There are other books, prayer cards, a whole bunch of things. But under books, Winning the Battle is one of the books that's there. Um, and what's growing right now, too, if anybody interested, there's small groups forming. We have a facilitator manual that's associated with this. Anybody at a church, anybody men's group, whatever, you want to do a small group with men using this as the basis of materials. We got a manual to tell you how to do it, and you get the book. I mean, the book's only $5. We designed this to be very inexpensive, no excuses. We want you to have this. So you start the groups, if you want to do that, or you want to buy one for yourself. It's $5 in shipping.
Yeah, be that. I mean, for the way it could change your life for $5, that's pretty.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Dan, Dan Aust, again, thank you, Dan, for coming on the show. Thank you for your ministry and your testimony and it's just your
Thank you.
story. Um, really glad that you came on and talked about the book. And well, you're welcome back on anytime. I would love to have you back on sometime.
Great. Let me know. Anytime you want, just let me know.
We'll do. Again, Dan Aust, everyone, check him out,
All right. Thank you.
roadtopurity.com. And we'll see you next time on Capitino Talk.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Catholic Table Talk podcast, where everything Catholic is on the table. Don't forget to subscribe to Catholic Table Talk on your favorite podcast platform to get new episodes delivered directly to you every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern.